Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. This is the SMLE, or Small Munitions Lee Enfield Rifle. Okay, this is number 4 in our 5-part series on Allied rifles of World War II. Okay, this guy has a detachable 10-round magazine on it, which is double what we could hold in the U.S. Springfield 03A3. It's very comparable in power to the Springfield. It's a really fine battle rifle, and as you can see, this thing is built rugged. It is built for battle. Okay, so it's just a really neat rifle. This is an SMLE, or Small Munitions Lee Enfield. This particular rifle, written right here on the side of the receiver, you'll be able to see number 4 Mark 1. Okay, but it also has something else on it. Right here on the receiver, it has stamped into it U.S. property. Now that's very, very unusual for one of these. In fact, this is the only one I've ever seen that has that in it. Now, I am not an expert on Lee Enfields. I don't know every Lee Enfield that was ever made, so by no means am I an expert. But I've never seen that before, so this is kind of a unique rifle. Now, as you can see, this thing is very, very long. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to take this buttstock off the rifle, because it just makes it a little smaller so I can keep most of the gun in frame. In order to do that, if you look right back here on the back of the stock, there's a little door right here on the butt plate, okay? If you open that door, you're going to see there's a hole that goes all the way into a bolt that bolts the back of this stock onto the rifle. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, taking the stock off, the buttstock off of our British Enfield. Now if you look, right here on the back of this butt plate, there's actually like a little door, okay? When these things get old, they get stiff, so you may have to use something to open it with, okay? Once you get it open, down inside that hole, there is a screw, a big bolt. Now, I already took my giant red screwdriver here, okay, this monster, okay? And the reason why you need a big one is so that you can reach all the way down the stock to where that bolt is all the way at the bottom, okay? So I already took the screw loose, and from here all I'm going to do is just simply slip the stock right off the back of the gun. Now I'm going to do that again. Alright, so once you get that bolt loose, all you got to do is kind of grab the stock and wiggle it a little bit, and it'll come right off. Okay. Now I already took the bolt loose inside here, so I didn't have to go through all the stuff of unscrewing it. But there was something I wanted to show you that happens a lot on some of these older battle rifles. Okay. Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. Hey listen, if you're watching this video, if you're enjoying it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, okay? That's really important to us. And make sure you like us, and by all means, come to visit us at askbill1911.com. But if you'll look down in this screw right here, you'll see that there's actually mud caked into this screw. This is very common on these old war rifles, okay? And you may have to kind of dig it out of there to get your screw in it, to get purchase on it, all right? So, as you can see, there's quite a bit impacted into that little slot on that screw. So, it's just a matter of kind of getting in there and doing some scraping back and forth, and you can get that mud out of there. And like I said, it's just plain mud. I mean, it's literally sand and rock and dirt. And that's from, you know, setting the gun down on the butt and all that. It's pretty normal. I wouldn't get too worried about it if you see it. So, that's the buttstock for our Enfield. We're going to get it out of the way, and we're going to continue on about this rifle. Now, one thing I wanted to show you, we talked about the magazine a minute ago, this 10-round magazine. So I wanted to show you something that's kind of important. The rounds that went into this British Enfield rifle they were what they call rimmed cases. Now this is a 30-30. I just didn't have any brass for this on hand, but it's also a rimmed case. Okay, if you look, there is actually an enlarged rim on the back of this case. So when you put them into the magazine, okay, you want to make sure that each round that you put in goes all the way to the back before you put the next one in, okay? Because when these stack, you want them to stack so that the cartridge that's on top, okay, is in front of the rim of the one that's on the bottom. The reason why is because if it's the other way around and it's like this and you try to push that bolt forward, what you end up with is a jam because it brings both cartridges forward at the same time, okay? So it's just something to be careful about when you're loading these. They're really neat guns. Now, as far as power is concerned, this thing is comparable to the 8mm by 57 Mauser. Now, there is a codicil to that I'll get into. The 8 by 57 Mauser in this country is downloaded in its pressure, so you don't have a full power cartridge like they had during World War II. But the full power cartridge on the 8mm by 57 Mauser is very powerful. Okay, it's comparable to our 30-06, and they are both comparable to the 303 Brit. Okay, they're all three of them are about 2,950 feet per second on velocity, and they're all running similar bullet weights. Okay. 150s, 170s, 180s. That's the weight, 170, 150, 180 grains of weight. So they all have about the same amount of energy when they hit, all right? So I told you a moment ago I was going to show you some things on this gun. Okay, now right here it says U.S. property. That's kind of rare. You don't find that on many of these, all right? And right here, I told you earlier, on the side of the gun, you would be able to find, okay, number 4, Mark 1. All right, so this is a 1942 rifle, okay? Now, I'm going to show you another example of this gun, okay? It is also a British Enfield. Now, this one is one that I built for sport shooting and chambered it in a different round. And I've showed this gun before, but there are a couple of differences in this action. The British do things a little bit differently. When they find something that works, they stick with it. And they do small modifications to improve upon it. For example, this might be a number 1 Mark III, a number 2 Mark IV. But each time they do a mark, that is an improved version of the last rifle. Now there are number 1s, there are number 2s, number 3s, and number 4s. Both of these actions are number 4 Mark I actions. Okay. Now this says on it long barrel, but it doesn't have that because I changed the barrel. This action is a 1943 action. Now it has on it a different sight, okay? It has a long-range sight on it that flips up, okay, this sight, and it's a vernier sight, so you can adjust here for distance, okay? It also has just a regular peep sight on the back of it, okay? When it's in the down position, that peep sight is in, okay? So the other rifle, the military one that I have, has a different sight on it, okay? It has a longer range flip up and a shorter range flip up, and that's all this has got for battle, okay? There is another difference on this action that I don't know. Maybe this is something that the U.S. wanted put on. I really have no idea where it came from. This is the only one I've seen that has this button. Now, I am not an expert on all these British Enfields. It could be I just never saw it before. So that's this button that's right here. Now what that button does is when you want to take the bolt out of the rifle, okay, you take this piece here and you spin it up out of the way. Well, you can't do that with this button. It's a lock that prevents you from turning it. So you have to push that button down, then move the bolt back the rest of the way, and then the bolt face will turn to the vertical position so that you can extract the bolt, okay? The other rifle, also a No. 4 Mk.1, okay, push it down, that goes down all the way, the bolt comes forward, you release the button, that puts it back in. Let me redo that because I think I was out of camera frame, okay. Now when you want to put it back down, you press and hold the button down, rotate that into position to slide the bolt forward. Now the bolt is locked and won't come out. You can't accidentally have the bolt come out. So that's what that button is for on this particular action. Now I'm going to show you the other one. Okay. Okay, on this rifle, it's conspicuously missing. Now it's possible because it's not really strictly necessary. On this rifle, there's a cutout right here, okay, where you line that bolt face up and you rotate it clear up here in the forward position and then pull the bolt back and out of the gun, okay. Now on the other one, it's got that release button, okay. So I don't know why they're different. They're both No. 1 Mark IVs. This one is a year later. I don't know, but the British, they don't just reinvent the entire machine every time they want to bring an update. They just make the update, okay? All right, so there was one other thing I wanted to show you. This rifle, I had to make the magazine for it because for hunting, you can only have 5 rounds. And that's what I built that rifle for, was hunting. So I built a single stack magazine. It works very well, it does the job. If you notice, the back end of the magazine looks very similar. Well, that's because I built it that way to work like that, okay? The front end looks a little different, but that's because I needed to put a little ramp on here to kick those 444 Marlin cartridges up a little bit when they went into the receiver. So I had to purpose design this and make this work for that 444 Marlin cartridge. But anyway, that's just nothing all that important. That's just my rifle. Okay, so back to our British Enfield. All right, when we want to take this thing completely apart to take the stocks off to see if we've got any rust or anything underneath it, it's much like the 3006 Springfield. We have these bands that go around the barrel, okay, you can see these, and these are going to have to be taken loose, all right. We're going to get started on that in just a minute, but we're going to take a little break and we'll be back. Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. Hey listen, if you're watching this video, if you're enjoying it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, okay, that's really important to us. And make sure you like us, and by all means, come to visit us at AskBill1911.com. Okay, we're back. Before we get started on this, I'm going to show you a tool that will make your life much, much easier when you go to put this rifle back together. Now, I don't know exactly why, but sometimes the British don't make things particularly easy when you want to take a gun apart, okay? These bands don't slide off the rifle easily, okay? So they're kind of a pain in the backside. Now, when you want to put them back on the rifle, that's where the issue comes in. So I'm going to start by taking the screw out, and this band is going to kind of spring open. You'll see it. Okay, so be aware and don't let that screw get kind of shot across the room. All right, so once this comes out, okay, and you got your screw out, all right, in order to get this thing off, you're kind of going to have to pull it open and slide it out of the way, all right? Now, this is going to make it so that your front handguard will come loose, but you've got to get the screw on the second band loosened up before it's going to slide out of there very easily. Okay, once you got it a little bit loose, you can slide the handguard and that band off the gun. All right. Okay, so from there, we're going to go ahead and take this band loose. Now we've got to get it loose enough that this stock in the back can slide a little bit forward and out from underneath here to pull out. So what happens if we go too far with the screw? Well, the same thing. This thing's going to kind of want to spring open. Okay. Okay. So once we've got it apart, like that, okay, we can move it around enough that we can get this rear handguard out of its position. And it's of course going to fight me, but we'll get it. Okay. All right, there we go. Now we got her out. Okay. So that's our rear handguard. Okay, so in order to get the rest of this out, we've got a couple of screws back here in the back that have to come loose. Okay. One of them is right here on the back of the trigger guard, and the other one is up here on the front. Now, if we don't take those out, the gun isn't going to come apart. So we have to unscrew that back screw. Oh, keep slipping out. Okay, there we go. Get it back in frame. I promise you, I'm not trying to hide this. I'm trying to show you, and I'm being fumble-fingered because of it, because I kind of want to keep my fingers out of the way so you can see what I'm doing. This isn't all that exciting, though. I'm just taking a screw out. All right, so once that screw comes out, okay, we're going to extract it. Okay, get out of there, you. And that's going to allow the back of this trigger guard to come out. All right, so now we're going to move on to that front screw up here. We're going to use a little bigger screwdriver in it. We're going to crank that screw out. And extract the entire trigger guard and trigger. It's all going to come out in one piece. Okay? So that all came out together. Now from here, we can simply slip the stock off the rifle, but in order to do that, we've got to get this front band off. And again, it's one of those, we're going to have to kind of pull it apart things, separate it to get it to move, or it's not going to want to come. And they're a pain in the butt. Believe me, they're a pain in the butt. This band especially is a pain because it's very, very stiff. It does not move easily. So we're going to kind of have to pull him apart and get it. Don't go too far. Just open it just enough to get it off. Don't keep going until you just destroy the whole thing. So in order to get the stock off, we kind of slip it up and out of position. It's got to come off on the front, otherwise it catches on the front sight, and then it'll slide off. So that removes our stock from our rifle. Now when you... Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. Hey listen, if you're watching this video, if you're enjoying it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, okay? That's really important to us. And make sure you like us, and by all means, come to visit us at AskBill1911.com. Rifle. Now when you put this back together, okay, this piece right here is a ring that just kind of slides on this barrel. So you're going to want to make sure that you've got that in the right place when you put it back together, because if it's rotated underneath, then the stock isn't going to go back together on the gun properly. All right, so when we pull the bolt out, we've already discussed that. It's pretty easy. Open it up, push it back, push that release down, unless you have the other type that has the cutout up on the front, and then you take it apart that way and pull the bolt out. Okay, so that's pretty well got us pulled down to the point where there's not much on this gun we can't do to it. It's actually a very simple, straightforward rifle. Not a lot of monkey motion, not a lot of stuff to go wrong. Back here on the magazine release, I wanted to show you this. There is one spring that runs the magazine release, okay, but it also runs the trigger return spring, okay. So again, they did everything as simply as they possibly could. Not a lot of monkey motion, not a lot of ridiculousness on this gun. Everything is very straightforward, okay. If you're going to take this apart, there's one screw and one pin to take this apart. Again, very simple, very straightforward. And it looks like that pin has slipped back a little bit, so I'm going to do a little maintenance while I'm here. And I'm going to tap it back into place. Okay. Just lightly give it a little bit of a tap. And I mean lightly, because I'm not having to do much and it's moving just nice, okay? Okay, that's back in. Alright, so as you can see, it doesn't hurt to inspect things. When the stock is on this, that pin isn't going to be able to back out on you. It's going to stay put pretty well. So let's put this thing back together and I will show you this tool and how it's going to benefit us. These aren't terribly expensive. If you've got one of these rifles, go to a hardware store by all means and invest in one of these, because you're going to find it to be a lifesaver to put this gun back together. Alright, so first we put the stock on. Okay, we're going to put the back end first. Okay, and the reason why we put the back end in first is because this has kind of a forward slant to it, and if we don't put the back end in first, the front of the stock gets hooked up on the front sight and doesn't want to move back into place the way it's supposed to. Okay, give it a little bit of a wiggle and a little bit of pressure and it should go right into place. Okay. Okay, something's hanging up. Got to find out what. Oh, there it went. It dropped in. Wasn't holding my mouth right, apparently. Okay, so from there, we're going to put the rear hand guard back on. Okay, simply slips underneath that ring and comes down. Now, that clamp, in other words, the band, the rear band, okay, this is where that Woodruff clamp that we used is going to come in so handy. Okay, in order to put this on, what we're going to do is we're going to use this Woodruff clamp to pull the ends together on that clamp so that we can get the screw back in it, because it's going to want to spring back open all the time, and that's a pain in the neck. So we take our Woodruff clamp and we slip it onto that band, okay, and we just kind of crank it down until the ends get close enough together where we can get the screw back in it. Now, be careful, don't tighten it down on the stock itself and crush the wood in the stock. Make sure you're on the band, okay, and that you crank it down far enough just so you can get the screws back in it. Don't forget, you got to put in your strap ferrule. Okay. Screw goes in, goes through, and if you've got it close enough together, start cranking it in, and it'll do the rest of the work of pulling that band back together. Okay, now, you don't want to tighten this band down all the way yet, because you still have to get the front hand guard back in. So you're going to slip that back in, okay, and then you're going to put this forward band back into place, which again is going to kind of be a pain in the ass. They just tend to be that way. So you may have to pull it apart again a little further just to get it back on the gun. Okay. Almost there. Okay. There it is. Alright, so we're going to use the same method. First, we're just going to squeeze it a little bit and get it back as far as we can. Okay. And then we're going to use our Woodruff clamp and just push those ends back together. Okay, center it up and crank them closer together. And once we get it close enough together, our screw will go right back in. So as you can see, not trying to hold this with my fingers shut and put the screw in, this thing pays for itself very, very quickly if you're going to be taking this gun apart. So once we put that screw back in, now if there's a way to get that band off that somebody knows about without pulling it apart like that, please let me know. Write to me. I've never found a way to get this apart other than what I just did, pulling it apart. So we still need to put the trigger guard and trigger back in the stock. Now, in order for this trigger to function, I want to show you this up close. All right. This is actually the trigger, okay? And in order for it to operate, it has to move forward, okay? So that means that this part of the trigger has to go in behind it, okay? It has to go in behind it like that. So we're going to make sure that we get it hooked in there and this pressed back into place, okay, centered up, slid in. Okay, there it dropped in. And that goes into there. And cranks in. Don't tighten it up all the way because you're going to want enough free play on the back to get that other little screw back into its hole. Okay? Fumble fingers in action here, boy. Now, when these screws get old from slipping out a lot, you're going to notice that these corners start to get pretty rounded on them. And that's why I'm slipping out of this screwdriver slot so often, because that screw's pretty worn out. And it's just a little difficult to deal with is all. So what's going to help is if I put it down on the ground, it'll be a little more cooperative, I think. But we crank that screw in. Okay, now I got to tell you, for a screw that's been around since 1942, I think that thing's in pretty decent shape. All the guys that have taken this thing apart over the years. Alright, so we're going to finish tightening this screw up here. And that's got our rifle landed back in our stock, ready to go. Okay, so putting the bolt back in, we've already discussed that. Pretty easy to do. Okay, we slide it in. We're going to push the button down, rotate the bolt face, and then slide the bolt forward. Okay. Okay, so this, excuse me, I got a cat hair in there. That's what happens when you have cats. Okay. Is our safety, all right? When this is engaged, it will not allow us to open the bolt, okay? When the rifle is cocked, okay, it does the same thing. It won't allow you to open the bolt, but it also disengages the trigger, so the trigger has no effect on the cocking piece. If you see that the cocking piece is back on this, like that, that means that firing pin's back in the firing position, ready to go. So be aware that that's what that means when it's back like that, and don't dry fire this gun, okay? You're talking about a firing pin that's, you know, 70, 80 years old. This thing has been around a very long time. So even if it's been Arsenal refit, it was done a long time ago. So these parts are very old. Try not to abuse them. They will be fine if used properly. Dry firing is always going to be hard on a firing pin, no matter what firing pin it is. So in order to get the stock back on this thing, the butt stock, we're simply going to slip the stock back in place. We're going to open that door, and we're going to tighten up that bolt. Okay. Okay, so we're just going to crank that bolt down until it's good and tight. And that sets our stock back on our Lee Enfield Small Munitions Lee Enfield SMLE No.4 Mk.1 rifle. This thing is a fine shooting gun. It bucks a little bit when you pull the trigger, so if you've got a shoulder pad, I would wear it on the range. If you start putting, 50, 100 rounds through this thing, it'll black and blue your shoulder for you. So just be aware that this thing does have some pretty solid recoil to it. This is the 4th episode of our 5-part series on World War II Allied rifles. Okay, this is the British Enfield No.4 Mk.1 rifle. Hey everybody, Bill 1911 here. Hey listen, if you're watching this video, if you're enjoying it, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, okay? That's really important to us. And make sure you like us, and by all means, come to visit us at AskBill1911.com.